Start again. Over to Jules. Thank you, Jules, for patiently waiting for so long. So she is my little angel. Was it 3 years back, Jules, when we met?
Yeah, I reckon it was 3 years.
Yeah, Brighton, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my father was very unwell. And Carl Dawson, my teacher, my mentor, and hers too had called us. We had to renew our licenses to teach matrix re-imprinting and EFT. So I was there to relearn everything and go through my training again. And this is the time when my topic of me having gone through sexual abuse in my childhood came up again. And Jules was working with me in one corner. I still remember. Shushila, could you please unmute? Could you please mute yourself? Thank you. She worked on me, and this is what I saw. The room in which I was getting abused. From that room, I suddenly went to a story in my childhood. Story of Thumbelina, where I saw myself sitting in the little flower, where I saw myself resting in a little walnut, where I saw myself in that alley where that little bird is lying down unwell and giving nurturing to that bird. And next I saw myself sitting on that bird and flying out of the room of abuse forever, ever and ever. I flew so high and I flew so much that I'm still flying there. And I owe it to you. Thank you so much for working, because had you not taken me out of that room, there was no way. I kept telling myself, I don't know how I got out of the room. I don't know how I got out of the room. And she said, it doesn't matter. Very gentle, very beautifully, she just kept holding my space till I could sit on that bird, which was so injured, heal that bird, sit on that bird and fly. It's still flying high in the sky, and I can see myself as a 6-year-old with 2 pigtails flying and waving from there and saying, hi, how is everybody? Thank you so much for putting me in that space. It's an honor to have you today here with my Indian friends and friends from across the world. Thank you so much, Jules, for doing what you're doing. Over to you. Love you.
Thank you, Anu. That's really beautiful to hear that. And I just have to pull myself together now. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's lovely to be here with everybody. It's a shame I can't see all of you, but for those of you I can see, it's great. So what I would love to do this evening is to share with you my area of speciality, which is helping people to transform their relationship with food. So obviously we're all coming from different parts of the world and we all have a different cultural experience when it comes to food, but we also probably share certain emotional connections with food or certain dysfunctionalities we have with food or challenges that we may all be able to relate to, even if we are coming from different cultural backgrounds where food is obviously variable. So what I'd love to do is share with you some of the things that I have found as the typical challenges when I work with my clients, and also to share some things that if you personally are struggling with, or you know someone that might be struggling, it could be something that you can help them with yourself. So I do have some slides that I'd like to show you. So I'm going to sort of share my screen, and I might go between sharing my screen and then coming back again to you. When there's questions, please just feel free to, Anu, let me know that there's questions in the chat box, and then I can just stop sharing my screen and answer them as we go along. That would be
absolutely. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. So, this is what I do. I encourage people to eat better and to feel better.
Just 1 minute, Jules. I need to request again. Can everybody mute yourself, please? Please, guys. Thank you. Just go ahead.
Thanks. So this is fundamentally what I encourage people, but the ultimate one here is the last one, is to feel better. So I just want you for a moment to close your eyes and just play along with this exercise of closing your eyes and picturing that today is the very last day on the planet. What would your favorite food be? What would your favorite meal be? So close your eyes and just spend 20 seconds or so thinking about that. And it would be great for you to write in the chat box what it is that your favorite meal is, so that we can all just share about the differences that we all experience in food. So when you've done that and you've got a visual image of what your favorite meal is, feel free to share it in the chat box. So one of the reasons I'd like to let you know about that eating habits tend to persist is because we are still learning the lessons that they are here to teach us. And very similar to Andrew's story about what, cancer was here to teach us, so many people are struggling with food. And actually there is a lesson here that people can learn should they want to embrace that challenge and see it as something that can open up into something more beautiful, rather than something that would stunt them and keep them stuck. So what are those sorts of lessons? Before we go into those lessons, I'm just going to check out the chat box and see what some of you have posted here. So thank you. Fish and chips, noodles and veg Manchurian, sweets, fish curry and rice, pasta and tiramisu, cauliflower, that's an interesting one, rice and yogurt, my mum's homemade food, dal, plate of grilled vegetables with broccoli and olive oil. So fantastic. Can you see how varied it is? And I love that, because it makes you realize that, there are so many things that everyone experiences differently. But when you think about those foods that you've written, I would probably say that the emotions that come up are happy ones. They may bring you joy, they may bring you happiness, they may bring you closer to somebody that you think of when you eat them. So all of these things are positive, I hope. Otherwise it would be an odd choice of food for your last day on earth. But anyway, so sometimes there are people in the world that struggle with their weight. And I always encourage my clients not to have a goal of weight loss, because why would anyone want to lose anything in life? It's all about what you can gain. Do you want to gain body confidence instead of lose weight? So I try to encourage people to think slightly differently about the goal of losing weight, because then already their struggle is halved. So sometimes, people expect this, a healthy food list for weight loss. And I always say, you're never going to get that, because it doesn't exist. And the reason it doesn't exist, we're going to go into a little bit more later, is quite obvious, that everyone is so different. So even just by the examples you've shared of what we choose to be our favorite food, it also is so relevant to what works well for our bodies. So there is no one list for weight loss that's conventional or that can work with everybody. So you won't ever get that. What you do need is courage. And if you imagine a doorway that you need to step through, on the other side is what your answers would be, what the universe is providing for you, what the reason is that you may have struggles or challenges with food. And with that little bit of courage to step through the door, you might just be able to see what's on the other side. Now, what I tend to find is that with courage, people can get life-changing outcomes. And that is the best thing that I could ever ask for, is when my clients do that action and they've got a life-changing outcome, and it's all because they chose to step through that doorway with courage and have an open mind to what they were experiencing. So they can do this with love, or they can do this with hate. If anybody has that sort of negative attitude towards exploring something like this, they probably won't get the results that they otherwise could have done. So I obviously always encourage people to explore anything that they have going on internally with love for themselves, with compassion for themselves, and the results are much more powerful. So loving ourselves into change is something that some of us would struggle with, and it's about really cultivating that self-love and self-worth in order to transform. So a little bit about me, but not too much. Why should you listen to me? Well, actually, you don't have to listen to me, but I have got 3 decades of experience working in this field. Doing what? This is what I do. I help people to look at body confidence, being authentic, building their self-esteem, having self-love, staying positive, making better food choices, and having a healthy lifestyle. And in various different ways, I've done this over my lifetime of working. And now I get invited to speak. I'm on panels. I sort of get invited to share my knowledge with people, to spread the word to the wider community. So this is an example of one of the clients that I've worked with, and this was her kitchen. So her kitchen, as you can see, was a little bit on the disorganized side, should I say. And she came to me really struggling with how to cook a meal and how to have a healthy attitude at work when she was eating lunch. She was a doctor's receptionist, so she would sit all day long and snack because she didn't actually have any time in her mind to prepare a meal at home. So when we explored what was going on for her, and I realized that this was what her kitchen looked like, we started to delve a little bit deeper. And then what I discovered was that her mother, who had recently passed away, my client had all of her mother's stuff in the kitchen. So a lot of this stuff belonged to her late mother, and my client was really struggling to process the grief. Do you think that that's a good place to make a healthy meal and start to consider her own well-being when she's surrounded by unresolved grief? No. And that's why she was struggling. So what we did was we avoided the subject of food until we had resolved her grief around her mother, and I started to help her to celebrate her mum's life instead of look at it as, oh, I'm surrounded by all her things. What happened to my client then? Well, she released the emotional obstacles that surrounded food. She disconnected the grief to food. She detoxed her kitchen completely. She gave all her unwanted belongings to charity, and she started then, and it was only then, to create meal plans that suited her lifestyle. And then she started to feel happier in her clothes, and she lost the obsession to lose weight. And then she was able to start inviting friends over to her house. So had she have gone to, let's say, a nutritionist, or she'd gone on a Weight Watchers plan, do you think that she would have got the same outcome? Pretty much no, because the root cause of why her kitchen was like that and why her eating was like that had nothing to do with food. So just to give you an example of another lady, this is not her, by the way, this is just a photograph of someone similar, a retired head teacher. So she came to me with no identity of who she was anymore. So she'd been a teacher for sort of 45 years, and then she retired, and then she just started going sort of home in the evening after doing whatever she did and eat and eat and eat. So she came to me with all of these concerns about non-stop eating. And what we identified was that she did not know who she was anymore. And once when we worked out that she had lost her purpose, she'd lost her why, she'd lost her identity, she was eating through boredom. And it was about igniting her with her hobbies, with her passions, with new things, with new communities, new friends. And the result of that was that she then had no reason to snack anymore. She wasn't then bored. She re-identified her purpose. She stopped drinking wine in the evening when she was alone. And she then started to take an interest in her image, and she got a personal stylist, and she took time off to work fully without feeling guilty, and she discovered new hobbies. So can you see as well how that had nothing to do with food either? That again was very much based on identity and using food as the way to fill a gap that she didn't know what she was filling. So I just would like to ask you, can anyone resonate with these two emotions in relation to your own food choices? So the first lady's emotions was sadness, and the second one was boredom. If anyone's got any of their own personal relation, it would be lovely to hear that.
Would
Yes,
anybody like
Anya.
to? Yeah, please go ahead.
Sorry.
Please go ahead, Anya.
My mother passed away almost 2 years ago, and I remember I had such a craving for chocolate. I was eating so many sweets like I had never done before. And then when I went for a blood test, he said, "Oh my God, all your sugar." And I said, "Yeah, I don't know why. I have this craving for sugar, which I never had before." And he said, "Well, it's because she passed away, and this is a way of, you know, your whole body needs to adjust again." But it was terrible. I didn't put on weight, but I knew it's not healthy for me to eat all this chocolate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So thank you for sharing that. And we are going to talk a little bit about cravings and what they mean in a little bit later. So no, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Anybody else wants to share? Please go ahead. It would be nice if people share. The spin drops slightly.
No problem. Okay, so I'll just carry on. If nobody has any questions, it's absolutely fine. So carrying on, this is something I would like to help you with. So F.L.A.B.S is an acronym for some emotions that typically you can feel and then reach for food. It would be great if you try and have a guess what F.L.A.B.S stands for. So think about negative emotions beginning with F or beginning with L or beginning with A, B and S, and pop it in the chat box. It will be interesting to see if anyone's on the right lines. Fear and loneliness. Okay, good. Thank you, Claudia. Addiction. Okay. Fear and loneliness. Thank you. Boredom. Yeah. Good. Shame. Interesting. Yeah. Thank you. So this is what they stand for: frustration, loneliness, anger, boredom, and sadness. Now, typically, but not always, people often reach for food when they're feeling these 5 emotions. And if that's you, and it may not be, but if that's you, one thing you could do is pop a little post-it note or a little piece of paper on your fridge or on your food cupboard that just says F.L.A.B.S. And what that might do is help you to just stop and take a moment before you reach for another chocolate or another packet of crisps or whatever it is that you reach for, and just say to yourself, might I be feeling one of these emotions? And actually I need to sit with that emotion rather than eat another bag of crisps. So if that resonates with any of you, then feel free to just pop that on a little post-it note and stick it on your cupboard. No one will know what it means apart from you. You can keep it as your own secret. So how do I work with clients? I sort of go through a 3-step system with each of their goals. So once when we've looked at what it is that they want to work through, we identify the problem, which is step 1. Step 2, we transform it into something pretty beautiful, and we transform it into something positive. And then they empower themselves to be able to know how to make the right decisions instead of ones that add a load of negative emotions to themselves. So what happens is F.L.A.B.S changes. So if they make empowering choices in food, and if they make the right choices in food, this is what they could potentially feel when they eat. They could feel fit, they could feel lively, alert, bright, and satisfied. And hopefully the food that you thought about when I asked you at the beginning to think about your favorite meal, that choice of food will help you to feel this. And it's not something that's going to make you feel guilty or, heavy or drained of energy, because that's not feeding or nourishing your body. But if it makes you feel like this, that's fantastic. Oh, I just see a thing from Teji. Wonderful approach. I have a tendency to eat more when I am in stress. Exactly. Thank you. Now, what is under the stress is a different emotion. So stress is the symptom, but it's not the emotion that's really going on. So that's really interesting that you say that. And it's not stress that you need to focus on. It's what exactly are you stressed about, which could be fear of something else that's making you feel stressed, that then makes you eat. So thank you very much for sharing that. Now, this is something that I often like to share, which is an analogy. Are you a carrot or are you a beetroot? And what does that mean? So what that basically means is many people tend to try and be somebody else, try and be somebody that they're not, try and fit into clothes that they just don't fit into, or try and look a certain way. But fundamentally, if you are the shape of a carrot, you are long and you are orange and you have a green top, can you ever look like a beetroot? No. And vice versa. If you are round with a long stalk and you're a beautiful red colour with green leaves, can you ever look like a carrot? However hard you try, you'll never get there. So what I tend to encourage people to do is stop trying to be something you're never going to be and start to see how beautiful you already are, what you already have, and work with that to feel your absolute best. Because if you try to fight to be something you're not, you're heading towards a struggle for a lifetime. Does that make sense? I hope so. So what that carrot and beetroot thing is about is called bio-individuality. It's about being a red apple when you're amongst green. It's about understanding what works for you and then feeding what works for you and not what works for somebody else. Bio-individuality, the three main principles of it are that no one lifestyle or diet fits all, which is why diets are a really ridiculous idea, because you can't be put on a diet and expect that it's going to suit you and your friend and your neighbor and your aunt and your mum. It simply cannot work because we all function so differently and our bodies will react so differently. So the other thing about it is that your needs will change over time. So whilst you might go on a diet at the age of 25, by the time you're, let's say, 60, you may have gone through childbirth, you may have gone through menopause, you may have had operations, your body would have gone through all these changes. That same diet may not work anymore. And again, what I find with my clients that come to me with all of this frustration about, well, it used to work and I lost so much weight and now I've been on that diet and I'm not losing anything, is that they're forgetting that they're not the same person anymore. And even like I'm talking about not comparing yourself to someone else, it's also really important not to compare yourself to who you used to be, because you're not that person anymore. And you may have gone through various different life challenges that now shape a new body that you have to fit into. So one person's medicine is another person's poison as well, which means that if you take the advice that veganism, for example, is right for everybody, that could be really detrimental for somebody whose blood type requires meat. So your personal choice on veganism, plant-based diet, meat eating, whatever it is, just has to suit you. It's not about what's right for anyone. Everyone has their own personal choice. I hope that makes sense. So if we just move on a little bit to hunger, have you realized that you may not be listening to your hunger signs anymore? Have they switched off? So what are the hungry signs? So I'm hungry, but I'm not hungry. Basically means you're hungry for something, but you're not hungry to eat food. So if you are aware of what you are hungry for, it usually isn't food that's going to help you. You might be hungry for a hug from a loved one. You might be hungry for a new career. You might be hungry for a spiritual path that you haven't followed for many years. Who knows what you're hungry for? But often it's not food. And it's important to recognize that people use food to fill those gaps, but they are actually out of touch with what they're really hungry for. So when you do get in touch with what you're really hungry for, you might want to look at this hunger scale and ask yourself that neutral is a good place to sort of say it's time to eat. When you've got to number 1 of extremely hungry, it's very likely that the choices you make are going to be unhealthy. You might quickly grab something that's quite full of sugar or quite full of carbs, or something that's quite processed, because you're extremely hungry and you need a quick fix. So it's always best not to eat when you're extremely hungry, and not to even get yourself to that point, but get yourself to the point of thinking about food when you're at number 5 and number 4. So getting in touch with your hunger scale. And on the other side of it, don't make yourself sick to the point that you stuff yourself. I just spoke with someone today who said to me, oh, I think we really need to have a conversation, because last night I stuffed myself to the point that I made myself unwell. And I just, immediately felt a huge amount of compassion for her, because there's something going on there where she doesn't know when to stop eating, and it's not food that she's looking to fulfill. So, I just want to tell you really about the hunger scale, to get in touch with your own bodies on that. Emotionally, this sort of comes back to F.L.A.B.S. What are you feeling when you eat? Because what we do want to feel when we eat is a sense of joy. We want to be relaxed. We want to enjoy our environment, eat happily with the people that we love, in an environment where we want to eat, and not in a place of eating on the go, or eating with the television on in the background, or, with people that we don't enjoy their company. It changes the energy in the food. So what are we also hungry for? I've sort of covered a little bit of that. Is things like relationships, is things like joy, is things like fulfillment. We're hungry for connection. And, when you have that with people internally, it just feels so much better than just having a nice meal which tastes good. I wonder if anyone agrees with that. Feel free to pop it in the chat box if you do. So one thing I've been talking to a lot of people about recently, since the pandemic, of working from home, is whether or not they are a grazer. And I've been helping corporate companies with their eating habits whilst they're at home. So we've been talking about grazing and the effect of grazing, and where they set up their workspace. So this might be helpful for some of you if you're working from home, because the location of where you work in relation to food is really important. So all of these people have set up their workspace in the kitchen. So if they are a grazer, and grazing, for those of you that don't know, means just eating throughout the day without a structure to their meal, it's going to be more likely that they're going to graze if they've set up their workspace in a kitchen. So what you want to be able to do is stay away from the kitchen, or if you can't, just have your back to where the food is. Obviously, if you don't have an issue with food, it's not an issue. So I'm only talking obviously about this if food is a problem for you. Pressing the pause button is just a little thing that you can easily do. Just imagine somewhere in your body that you have a pause button that you need to press before you go reaching for those snacks, or before you go and think about opening the cupboard again. Just work out in your own mind, where's the pause button? Have it somewhere accessible, like here on your thumb, and just press it now and again. And it just gives you a moment to make a different choice. So Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a Buddhist monk, who is the father of mindfulness, he speaks about habit energies. I'll just read it out. Our joy, peace, and happiness depend very much on our practice of recognizing and transforming habit energies. There are positive habit energies that we have to cultivate, and there are negative habit energies that we have to recognize, embrace, and transform. The energy with which we do these things is mindfulness, which comes down to what we were speaking about before with Andrew's comment about breathing. Is through your mindful practice, through breathing, you can transform negative energy and get yourself into a place of embracing and transforming what needs to be changed. And this comes down as well to how you're eating. Mindless eating in front of a screen or in front of TV or on the go, walking down the street, is not going to be very good for any reason at all. But mindful eating, where you're taking your time and you're breathing slowly and you've considered the food and where it's come from and how it's prepared and who you're eating with, will help you feel so much more nourished and positive and energetic when you've eaten it. So finally, we're just going to have a chat about cravings. I do recognize that there's a lot of content here, and it might be something that it might go over some of you over your head, but take what you can from it. So cravings, we spoke before, there was a question about cravings. What do they mean? Well, there's 3 types of cravings, and this might help some of you to decide what's going on for you. Supportive cravings are the ones that your body has a wisdom to needing. So if you're lacking in vitamin C, for example, your body might naturally be craving oranges or orange juice or things like that. And you don't need to know why, but you're craving something. Your body knows why. And it's important that you're able to listen. Associative cravings is when, for example, let's just say, when you were young, your parents used to bake fresh bread, or they used to make curries, or they used to just do things that you got a lot of joy from. Well, as an adult, perhaps an associative craving is wanting to eat curries on a weekend or wanting to eat bread every morning. And it's what it is, again, that you're doing there is craving the family time that you used to have, craving the love that it used to give you. And they can be positive, they can also be negative. But that might answer a few things as to why people crave certain foods at certain times, and also not know where those cravings come from. And dispersive cravings are the ones where whatever you're craving is going to zap you of energy, is going to zap you of nourishment. And whilst they are the hardest ones to give into, they're also really important, because often they're the ones that people struggle with. So I have come to the end of my presentation, and I have a gift for all of you. So I love giving gifts. I love giving gifts to my clients and my friends, and I'd love to give a gift to you. And that gift is my ebook. So everything that I have covered tonight, I have been sharing with, like I said, quite a lot of people in corporate companies and helping them with their well-being at work. So I would love to offer you this ebook. It also contains things we haven't spoken about tonight on movement, emotional well-being, and rest and rejuvenation. And all you need to do, if you'd like to receive it, is copy this link. I'm going to put it in the chat box as well. That will just, you join my mailing list, I then send you the ebook, and I promise you, I do not bombard you with anything that you do not want. So if you'd like this, I have set this special link up just for you. I would be very happy to gift it to you. And that is the end of, my talk. But I would also just like to offer, if anyone has got some personal issues that they're sitting with right now that I've said, I'd love to hear from you and help you out on a personal one-to-one. And here is a link to my diary, should you wish to book in a telephone call with me. So please do as well, feel free to write that link down. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now.
Wow, wonderful. So beautifully explained. Anybody, any questions? Sharing? Should we, this is what I'm going to do, like olden times I used to do this. I used to call out everybody's name and say, could you please unmute yourself and share or ask? You could share how you felt. You could ask if you have a problem. And let's go with that. Let's go first with Anya. Anya, can you unmute yourself? Thank you.
Yes, I mean, I talked already about the cravings I had, but I think also during the lockdown, we tend to eat more. We tend to go more, at least I do, more frequently to the fridge. So it's not really set hours when I eat. It's a bit of a mess. But what I have in my fridge is not a mess. It's cauliflower, and I eat a lot of raw food. So it's good food, but I don't think it's that healthy I don't have fixed timings anymore. You know, like you would sit down and now it's lunch and okay, I live alone. I have no other one with me. But it's interesting because I said, if you don't really force yourself also, like say, okay, now it's breakfast time, now it's lunch time, now it's dinner time, you know, that doesn't happen since lockdown. I constantly go to but I haven't put on weight, you know, but it's this just chewing on something. I don't know. Yeah. And it's all these different sessions we listen to, you know, and then sometimes you drink your tea or you have something to nibble on, you know, because sometimes we spend 4 hours on Zoom or a whole day on Zoom, you know, and then prepare a little bowl of whatever. But it's not the normal way of eating, but I do go more often to the fridge.
Absolutely. And the thing is about that is that you know how possible it is for you to plan meals because you've done it in the past, and it's about understanding your new way for now. It might just be temporary, of what works for you. But things like batch cooking, things like preparing in advance where you've got good food to reach for, but you're not preparing it at every meal because you've already prepared it, let's say a few days before. You could have frozen it, you could have, you know, had it had it for a couple of meals. So what you make for lunch, you could make more and then make sure it lasts for dinner the next day. So that sort of preparation that you know works already, just ask yourself, even if it's just for lunch or for dinner, what you need to do to be more prepared so that you're not grazing. Yeah.
Let's go to the next person. Aarti, do you have anything to ask, share?
Hi.
Hi.
I think when you shared about the flap to write it down on the fridge, I think I liked that, because there are times when I realize that when I'm bored or I'm very frustrated because we are locked down in the house. And initially the first 2 months I did practice certain things about being very mindful about what I'm eating. But now since the past 2 weeks, I've realized I am going to the fridge to see what's there, and I have chucked out all chocolates from my fridge so that I don't get any cravings. Because I was off sugar for 2.5 months. But then now I feel now I'm again getting cravings for sugar. So I find if there is a chocolate somewhere, but then obviously I've chucked everything out, so it's not there. So I look in for something which is, you know, like, I think that's boredom that's coming up to me now. And that usually happens only in the nights.
Yeah. It's really common that it happens in the night. And
only in the nights.
Only in the night. I know.
Yeah.
It's really common. But, you know, a really good thing would be to just ask yourself, what are you bored from not doing? What could you do in the evening that gives you pleasure, that gives you joy? You know, is it a new hobby that you could suddenly find yourself doing that doesn't involve chocolate and eating?
Wonderful. Let's ask Dr. Varsha Parikh.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
I've been practicing homeopathy and dietitian both, and I have so many patients coming in for erratic craving. Somebody saying I eat ice tray. She used to eat 15 to 20 ice cube cut trays in a day. There was a second lady who was eating a lot of chalk pencils. Some saying raw mangoes. So you have any article, ma'am, where you can relate all these deficiencies? I've been treating them, but any article of yours would help me.
Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put in the chat box here a fantastic book called Food Energetics. Can you see that?
Yes.
It's a really good book on what cravings mean to the body. So what they could be lacking in may not be emotional, it may be physiological, it may be, you know, something that's not associative to a particular memory, but it may be something that their body's craving for a particular reason. And that is a really good book for that. When you start to look at what's going on emotionally or physiologically for someone, that's not in the book because it's all about individual experiences, but that might help you.
Wonderful. You can also, Jules, put the link for your ebook in the main group, and then people can. So next person, Ashwini. Thank you so much. Varsha, Ashwini, would you unmute yourself? Okay, let's go to the next person. Claudia, do you have anything to ask and share?
To share, yes, not to ask.
Okay.
I was never one for sort of formal eating. For me, eating was I had to do it. And I realized that this is not the right attitude, because food is giving nourishment to yourself. So now I totally shifted it, and I have created a mindful eating ritual. So before every meal I eat, I connect to the food and bring that the qualities of that food, the nutrition, to alive, because it will feed my body. So since then, I have totally different relationship to my food. Organic and all of that. So that helped me an awful lot. So it's more sharing than a question. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Darpana, do you have any question or sharing? Darpana, you have any question or sharing? Dr. Manorama? Mr. Kesri? Mamta? Okay. Sana, do you want to share something or ask something? Sanskriti? Shilpa?
Hi.
Yeah.
Jules, it's been a wonderful session, and I really related with whatever you said, you know, about a lot of people said about stress eating. I think I'm going through that. So I have an issue that whenever I have a stress or a fear, as you rightly pointed out, you know, I tend to eat a lot. So I'm really looking forward to going through your ebook and the book that you've recommended, and I hope I'm going to get some positive outcome out of that. But thank you so much. Your session was really very nice.
Pleasure.
And thanks, Anu, for holding this.
Thank you so much. Sanskriti, any question? Shamla? Violet? Okay, we are done. I have an announcement.
I have one question.
Wonderful. I like that. Yes.
Should I ask?
Yes, go ahead.
I have I worked a lot on my food. It was one of my binge things that I was doing before my cancer was diagnosed. And I think people abuse cigarettes and people abuse alcohol. I was abusing food. Subsequently, while I've made a huge turnaround, my willpower in the morning half is very different from the willpower in the afternoon half with food.
Your willpower in the morning has a different to the willpower in the afternoon?
Yes.
Yeah, it's okay. Do you, is there a question?
What would it, what do you think could be the...
Okay, so
sometimes would be too much to ask, but what could be the indicators for?
Yeah, no, it's not too much to ask. So it could be to do with your energy levels. So when you are energetic, you give energy not only to your physical body, but your emotional and mental body as well. So if your energy levels are lower in the afternoon, you might need to find what keeps your energy levels consistent to be able to make better choices, because actually it's not about willpower. So people do think that it is about willpower, and they need willpower to stop them from eating certain things, but it isn't. Because if there was not an issue with energy or what your body is craving, it wouldn't be anything that you need to try hard to stop doing. It would just be a natural thing. Does that make sense?
I think so. I think I'm getting an insight there.
Yeah. So you might want to ask yourself, are you having enough protein? Because protein helps your energy levels throughout the day. And so if your energy is dropping, that will have an impact on what you then eat in the afternoon.
Okay.
Especially being a vegan.
Right. Interestingly, sometimes when I don't have lunch, actually I have more energy than when I have the lunch. So
You
it's
have
very,
more when you don't have lunch.
when I don't have lunch and I've had a good breakfast, I'm left with more energy than if I have the lunch. Somewhere the lunch also makes it sluggish.
Exactly. So the lunch is probably depleting your energy because your body doesn't need it.
Right.
That's what I'm... Exactly. So if you listen to your body, which you are doing, and which obviously you have been doing, you won't need lunch. You have a really good breakfast. Right. You can then have a light dinner, and that might be all you need. Because if you're losing energy when you eat lunch, there's something wrong.
That's right. Interesting. Thanks. Insightful
Pleasure.
For me. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Wow.
Anu, I just want to share. Jules, thank you so much. I never realized to watch emotion when you get you get a craving. So that F.L.A.B really works. And I think I also got my answer that when I'm stressed is possibly due to the frustration at work, because there is a lot of expectation management you have to do internally with yourself, with your teams, and not handling that correctly is leading to the stress. So I'll work on this to identify the emotion and work on the emotion at that moment rather than succumbing to the craving of food.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Anu, I have a question.
Hi, ma'am.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, how are you, Anu?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So the question is basically that when we, like many a times we have craving for different taste. Like sometimes we feel like having spicy things. Sometimes we feel like having sweet things. Sometimes we feel like having sour things, So what is the significance? What is the emotional significance behind it?
So it might not be an emotional significance. It might be what your body is needing to connect to at that time. So if there was a consistent pattern in what you crave, it's typically might be emotional. If there is no pattern in what you crave, but it happens at different times of day, or it happens when you're surrounded by certain people, then it's likely more that that's what your body is in need of, as opposed to it being emotional. So not everything is emotional, but a lot is. And again, sorry. I was going to say the book that I put up here, Food Energetics, it has a lot of information in there about that sort of thing. What does it mean when you crave salty, sweet, spicy food in quite a lot of detail? There's a lot of information in there.
So, Jules, do you have any input on acidity that people may feel? Is it like, according to you, emotionally connected? Because there's a lot of acidity in India, I would say. A lot of people suffer from acidity in India. Belching and burping and all that stuff. So is there anything that they can do which could help them out, or any diet that they could follow or anything like that?
Yeah, really good question. It's really about balancing it with more alkaline food. So if you know that you've got an acidity, high level of acidity, it's about balancing with alkaline. So very, very simply, things like lemon, every morning having lemon in water eventually builds up the alkaline levels, which will then balance the acidity. Very simply, in a nutshell, that is one way of dealing with that.
Wow, that's simple. That's not very difficult.
It's not difficult.
No. Would you like to say something before we end the session?
Me?
Yes.
Yes. what a pleasurable audience you are, because you're so engaging, and I love the fact that this feels so personal. It's like you're all in my house right now. I love it. And thank you so much for inviting me, and for being engaged with what I have to share. And yeah, I wish you all well every day. So yeah.
Thank you so much. And if we invite you again, will you come back again? That's my question to you.
Thank you.
Jules, it is you who kept us engaged at 11:30 p.m. in India. It was so interesting. You made us connected so much. Thank you again.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
I have a very good news for all of you. On the 21st, that's the coming Sunday, we are going to be celebrating the 100th that we have completed with sound. And there is this gentleman who has agreed, Chintan Dalal, to do sound for us. But we will be starting a session earlier because his instruments, sound instruments, are kept in a place which shuts down by 9 o'clock. So we're going to be starting a session on that day at 8 p.m. India time. And I will send all of you the invite. Everybody is welcome. And he is brilliant with his work. He is going to be playing with a room full of instruments, basically, for you, and create a sound music for you for about an hour. And then we have F.L.A.B.S, who will be doing womb healing with sounds. So we have two different speakers, one who will be doing womb healing with sound and sounds with the throat, not using instrument, and the other one who's going to be using instruments and actually making you go through in a beautiful place. So have your dinner early. Mark your calendars. We are starting early on the 21st. That's the coming Sunday, and enjoy. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Hope to see you every day like this till we continue. Yeah.